Apple Podcasts, one of the largest and most popular podcast directory services on the planet, has delisted 4 out of 5 of Alex Jones' Infowars shows, not just specific episodes, but the entire shows, for violating the terms of service against hate speech. In a statement Sunday evening to BuzzFeed News, Apple confirmed that it notified Jones of the decision to remove the 5 shows under its hate speech guidelines earlier this weekend. Apple does not tolerate hate speech, and we have clear guidelines that creators and developers must follow to ensure we provide a safe environment for all of our users. Podcasts that violate these guidelines are removed from our directory, making them no longer searchable or available for download or streaming. We believe in representing a wide range of views so long as people are respectful to those with differing opinions. Spotify, Facebook, and YouTube have followed Apple's lead. Twitter and Twitter-owned Periscope have not. Charlie Warzel, who co-authored the article, noted, "Last 6 months, I've had dozens of conversations with people at YouTube and Facebook. Most have taken principled stands about why this channel had to remain up. They suggested those pressuring to remove the page didn't understand the nuances of moderation. Funny how all of that evaporated after Apple took action." John Pachkowski, the other co-author, said, "Wonder if Tim Cook will comment on what it's like to set policy for Apple and Facebook and YouTube as well." If you're not familiar with them or didn't realize Apple had content guidelines for the podcast directory, I'm going to put them up on the screen right now. The pertinent one in this case is content depicting graphic sex, violence, gore, illegal drugs, or hate themes. Basically, in order to have a podcast, you have to have an RSS, a really simple syndication feed, and you have to submit that feed to Apple. Apple glances at it, and if it blatantly violates the guidelines, it gets rejected. But if people complain to Apple about content in an existing podcast, Apple will also investigate those complaints and similarly reject, aka delist, shows that are found to be in current violation. Individuals can still add those shows manually to their own Apple Podcasts app by going to Library, Edit, Add Podcast by URL, and pasting in the RSS, but they won't be suggested, listed, or otherwise marketed by Apple. YouTube told BuzzFeed News that when users violate the platform's terms and policies repeatedly, like our policies against hate speech and harassment, of our terms prohibiting circumvention of our enforcement measures, we terminate their accounts. Facebook, in a press release, said, "We believe in giving people a voice, but we also want everyone using Facebook to feel safe. It's why we have community standards and remove anything that violates them, including hate speech that attacks or dehumanizes others. Earlier today, we removed 4 pages belonging to Alex Jones for repeatedly posting content over the past several days that breaks those community standards." Despite Apple's comment, it didn't remove all of the shows. One still remains. Nor have Google or Apple removed the Infowars app from the Google Play Store or App Store, respectively. That app provides full access to the same and more content than the podcasts. Neither Apple nor Google have commented on why those apps remain either, despite appearing to violate very similar content policies as Apple Podcasts and YouTube. Reaction has been mixed and, as expected, extreme. On one end, you have people still upset it took so long to get the shows removed in the first place and livid that the apps remain. On the other, you have people who believe it sets a dangerous precedent that will inevitably be used to restrict ideas on the world's biggest platforms. There's also been a lot of sensationalism thrown around and a lot of simple misunderstanding. First, that Google, Apple, Facebook, etc. don't already moderate content. They absolutely do. They always have. Porn is perhaps the clearest example. Most of the major platforms won't host or list porn on their servers or in their directories. People will argue about the lines between art and nudity and porn, about why male nipples aren't removed when female nipples are, or complain about photos of breastfeeding, or become indignant at those who complain. But most reasonable people and platforms accept that there is a line when it crosses over into porn, and that's not something they want to host or see on their networks. The same is true for other content types, including hate speech that violates the standards and policies of the platform. Second, that this is somehow a freedom of speech issue. It isn't. There's no freedom of speech on somebody else's dime. Facebook, Google, and Apple aren't countries or governments. They're companies. Every publisher and every store has the freedom to set its own content policy as long as it doesn't violate the law. That means, as much as it makes me personally heartbroken, NPR is under no obligation to air my Dog Bark Theater, BBC my Babylon 5 Puppets reboot, or the National Post my Cooking with Dirt column. Tears. I know. No one here is being denied freedom of speech. They're being denied free marketing. They can still set up and pay for their own distribution platforms if that's what they really want to do. Third, that this is censorship of any kind. To be clear, Facebook not publishing tushies is another example of standards and policies, not censorship. For it to be censorship, a government would have to force Facebook to remove tushies and bar them from future tushy publishing. That would be censorship, and still not by Facebook, but by the government compelling Facebook. Now, some will argue that Apple and Google and Facebook are so enormous that they have become an oligarchy that controls most content distribution on the planet and should therefore be treated as a de facto country when it comes to issues like freedom of speech and censorship. Or alternatively, that the US government's elected representatives should be the ones who decide rather than the company's boards of directors or executives. The second part is kind of ridiculous, simply because it's yet another example of people forgetting that there are more countries in the world than the US. And we've seen what happens when China, for example, starts exercising content control over internet companies. The first part could maybe be argued, but doing so after years of content moderation and worse, years of abuse like running psyops on the newsfeed or Cambridge Analytica data scandals sounds kind of like cherry-picking a symptom long after the patient died of disease. Here's my take. I'm deeply concerned about how much influence and control the major internet megacorporations have over our information and our lives, and it's only going to get bigger with artificial intelligence. But yeah, I'm going there. With awesome power comes awesome responsibility. And I'd be more worried if, like Twitter, these companies were all feeding us to the collective wolves. Lines should be tight, but they should also be clear. Policies should be consistent, but they should also be transparent. Reasonable people can agree on reasonable limits. We already do, every day, on everything from what's a crime and what's not, to what's porn and what's not. We can agree on a line here as well, and we can debate it with intelligence and passion to make sure it covers enough and never gets clawed back or pushed forward at our own collective peril. Because ultimately, we really are all in this together, and we're all we have. And if you feel passionate about it, if you want to make your own arguments, you can start your podcast all on your own, and Skillshare can help. Skillshare is an online learning community with over 20,000 classes in design, business, technology, and yes, podcasting. Premium membership gives you unlimited access, literally all you can learn, so you can improve your skills, learn new skills, or just get other skills and do the work you love, or work you never thought you would love. And because Skillshare is sponsoring the show, you can get 2 months for free. To sign up, visit the link in the description and get 2 months of unlimited access for over 20,000 classes for free. Thank you, Skillshare. So that's what I think, but I would love to hear what you think. Are Apple, Facebook, and Google right for doing this? Is Twitter wrong for not doing it? Are Apple, Google, and Facebook wrong for not doing it sooner or for doing it at all? Is this a discussion, an important discussion that we should be having, or are these absolutes that nobody should be violating one way or another? Please let me know what you think. Hit like, hit subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.